The Galactic Council's vast chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from across the stars assembled for what was supposed to be the final peace talks to end centuries of interspecies warfare. The tall, opulent room was a neutral ground, its transparent walls revealing the distant nebula and swirling star systems beyond. For most of the representatives, it was an awe-inspiring setting, perfectly designed to promote diplomacy. But for Ambassador Maya Roberts of Earth, the towering glass structures only served to emphasize the fragility of the situation. Humanity had come a long way in the last century. From a primitive species fighting for survival on a single planet, they had swiftly evolved into a significant power, now taking part in a complex web of galactic politics. Earth's rise had been meteoric, but it had not come without its enemies. Today's peace talks, brokered by the Galactic Council, were humanity's first major opportunity to secure a formal place within the galaxy's power structure. The hope was to end the long-standing hostilities between the larger, older species, those whose territories had long dominated space, and the newer, expanding human colonies. However, the air was thick with distrust. Across the circular table, the alien leaders glared at one another, each species wary of the other's intentions. There were the Vulture, a highly intellectual race that prized logic above all else, whose representatives regarded humanity's rapid expansion with suspicion. Beside them sat the Xathra, a once proud warrior race that had lost their ancestral territories to human settlements. Their scowls betrayed deep resentment. And then there were the Criveri, an ancient, formidable species with a telepathic network connecting their minds. They had long dominated the Council's deliberations and were particularly scornful of human progress. As the first speaker took the podium, his voice reverberating through the chamber, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that things were already doomed. The accusations began quickly, the oldest and most bitter grievances brought to the surface. Human encroachments on borders, unprovoked military skirmishes, and, perhaps most damning of all, the rapid rise of human technology that threatened to upend the delicate balance of power. We cannot allow a race so reckless and unrestrained to continue its expansion without checks, the Vulture representative said, his voice cool and controlled. Maya, along with her team of diplomats, had prepared meticulously for this day. Yet even she couldn't have anticipated how deeply entrenched the alien species were in their disdain for humanity's ascent. Despite Earth's overtures of peace and cooperation, it quickly became apparent that the old guard had no interest in seeing humans as equal members of the galactic community. Instead, they saw the human race as a dangerous wildcard, something that needed to be controlled before it disrupted everything. When it was finally Maya's turn to speak, she stood and addressed the council, her voice steady but firm. Humanity has earned its place in this galaxy, and we will no longer be shackled by outdated ideas of what we can and cannot do. We are not asking for your permission. We are here to forge a future, not to relive the mistakes of the past. The room fell silent, and Maya could see the shock on the faces of the alien representatives. No one had expected her to be so direct. The Criveri leader, a towering figure with silver skin and piercing, golden eyes, leaned forward. "You are playing with fire, Ambassador," he warned, his voice chilling. But Maya didn't back down. "If the only way forward is through war, then we will fight. But we will not beg for peace." In that moment, the peace talks shattered. The tension in the room was palpable as old grudges, wounds, and fears resurfaced. The future of the galaxy was now uncertain, and humanity's role within it was no longer a matter of discussion, but of inevitable conflict. The Galactic Council Hall remained eerily quiet after Ambassador Maya Roberts' declaration. The alien representatives exchanged tense glances, the atmosphere charged with disbelief. Maya's words had struck a nerve, and the consequences were immediate. What had been intended as a day of negotiations had quickly devolved into a battleground of ideologies. The peace talks, which had taken years to arrange, now seemed to be on the brink of total collapse. The Criveri leader was the first to recover from the shock, his voice low but filled with an underlying menace. "Your audacity will be your downfall, human. Do you truly believe your species is prepared to face the might of the entire galaxy? You are but infants in this universe." Maya stood her ground, undeterred by the threat. "We're prepared to face whatever comes," she replied, her tone unwavering. "Humanity will no longer be a passive participant in galactic politics. We will chart our own course, with or without your approval." Her words were a bold challenge, and as soon as she finished speaking, murmurs of shock and outrage rippled through the room. The other species had not expected this. The Vaulter, whose society was built upon logic and strategy, seemed rattled by the audacity of the human stance. The Xathra, warriors to the core, exchanged grim looks, perhaps considering the implications of a war with a species as unpredictable as humanity. Ambassador Roberts continued, her voice rising in resolve. "We refuse to let our future be dictated by an antiquated system of governance. Earth is not your subordinate, and neither are the colonies we've established. We are a free people, and we choose to shape our destiny. From this moment forward, Earth will no longer abide by the rules of the Galactic Council." The room seemed to freeze, and then the Criveri leader's voice boomed once more. "Then you have made your choice, Earth, a choice that will lead only to your destruction." Despite the threat, Maya remained calm, her words sharp and deliberate. "Let me be clear. Humanity will defend its sovereignty, and we will not be intimidated. If war is what you want, then we will fight. But we will fight on our terms." A heavy silence followed as the gravity of Maya's words set in. Outside the council hall, humanity's decision would reverberate through the galaxy, sending shockwaves of uncertainty and fear across countless star systems. It wasn't just a rejection of the peace talks. It was an announcement that humanity was no longer content to remain on the periphery of galactic power. As the delegates from the various alien factions began to argue among themselves, Maya turned and exited the chamber, her heart pounding with both the weight of her decision and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. She knew the road ahead would be perilous. Allies would be few and enemies many. But she was resolute. Humanity would no longer be a pawn in a game played by ancient, stagnant powers. The future would be theirs to create, no matter the cost. And so, as the doors of the council chamber closed behind her, the galaxy held its breath, teetering on the edge of a new and uncertain era. In the days following Earth's bold rejection of the Galactic Council's peace talks, the galaxy teetered on the brink of chaos. News of Ambassador Maya Roberts' ultimatum spread like wildfire across the stars, igniting a firestorm of political unrest. The alien species, once united under the fragile peace brokered by the Council, were now splintering. The unthinkable had happened. Humanity, the youngest and most unpredictable race, had defied the entire galaxy. On Earth, the mood was mixed. While many celebrated the boldness of their leaders, others were filled with trepidation. The news media broadcasted reports of military units being mobilized, and citizens watched in anxious anticipation as the first signs of conflict emerged. The human government, long accustomed to dealing with Earth-based threats, now found itself embroiled in something far larger. Diplomats scrambled to secure alliances, military commanders braced for war, and the public was divided, some supportive, others fearful of the consequences. Ambassador Roberts, now back on Earth, had become a symbol of defiance. She was heralded as a hero by those who saw humanity's actions as a necessary stand for independence, but across the galaxy, she was viewed as a dangerous provocateur. The Criveri, the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, wasted no time in mobilizing their forces, deploying fleets near the edges of human space as a direct threat. They had no intention of letting a rogue species disrupt the delicate balance they had maintained for millennia. But it wasn't just the Criveri who were concerned. The Vaulter, ever the tacticians, saw humanity's rise as a destabilizing force, and they wasted no time in pressuring other galactic powers to take action. Diplomatic channels between species were quickly severed, and the once cooperative atmosphere of the Galactic Council began to crumble. The Xathra, who had been patient with the negotiations up until now, were now openly hostile. They viewed humanity's rejection as an affront to their honor and were already discussing military options. In the midst of this, the Creveri began to take more direct actions. Their telepathic network, which had been one of their greatest assets for controlling the flow of information, was now working overtime, attempting to sway undecided species into opposing humanity's actions. The Creveri, who had maintained a stranglehold over galactic diplomacy for centuries, now felt threatened, not just by humanity's defiance, but by what their rise might mean for the future of galactic politics. Meanwhile, humanity's diplomatic efforts were proving more effective than the Creveri anticipated. In the shadows of the Council's disarray, Earth's ambassadors were reaching out to smaller, lesser-known species who had long been marginalized by the Galactic Council's elites. These species, living on the fringes of galactic society, had long felt ignored or oppressed. The idea of an upstart power like humanity challenging the Council's authority struck a chord with them. Many began to question if this was the beginning of a new order, one where their voices could finally be heard. The alliances humanity forged were fragile, but they were growing. The first few small victories came not from battles or military engagements, but from diplomatic wins. A few smaller systems declared their neutrality or even expressed support for Earth's stance. These were important first steps, signaling that there was more to humanity than the galaxy's ruling powers had realized. But for every small victory, there was also growing resistance. The Creveri and their allies were quick to retaliate, calling for immediate sanctions, blockades, and the preparation of military forces for a total war. Earth had walked away from peace talks, but it was now clear that the entire galaxy was on the verge of war. The threads of stability that had held the galaxy together for so long were unraveling, and there was no turning back. With each passing day, the stakes grew higher, and the future of all species hung in the balance. The only question that remained was, would humanity be able to navigate the storm they had unleashed, or would their defiance lead to their destruction? As the tensions escalated, it became clear that the galactic political landscape was shifting. Humanity's rejection of the Galactic Council's peace talks had left a power vacuum, and it wasn't long before factions began to form. While many of the older, established races aligned themselves with the Council's authority, a few smaller, less powerful species saw an opportunity to break free from the shadow of the dominant forces. These species, some of whom had suffered under the Council's rules for generations, began to reach out to Earth. Among these new allies were the Khazari, a nomadic, fiercely independent race known for their warrior culture. The Khazari had long been on the periphery of galactic politics, often ignored or dismissed by the more powerful factions. Their people valued strength, honor, and freedom above all else. They saw in humanity's bold rejection of the Council's authority a kindred spirit. They too had struggled against the oppressive control of the Galactic Council and had long resented the complacency of the older races. The first contact between Earth and the Khazari was tentative, but it didn't take long for both sides to recognize the potential of an alliance. The Khazari, led by their charismatic and battle-hardened leader, Shakur, offered not only their support, but also their formidable fleets. In exchange for advanced human technology and weaponry, the Khazari pledged their military might to humanity's cause. It was a deal that would not only give Earth the edge it needed in the coming conflict, but also solidify the Khazari's position as a major player in the new galactic order that seemed to be emerging. Humanity's first true military alliance had been forged, and it was a powerful one. The Khazari were formidable warriors, their fleets known for their ruthlessness and efficiency. With their support, Earth's forces would be able to contest the Creveri and their allies more effectively, giving humanity a fighting chance. However, the alliance was not without complications. The Khazari's tactics, while highly effective, were often brutal and uncompromising. Their methods were foreign to humanity's more diplomatic approach, and there were concerns that the alliance could lead to a broader escalation of violence across the galaxy. Ambassador Maya Roberts, ever the pragmatist, recognized the necessity of this new partnership, even if it meant compromising some of humanity's more idealistic principles. The situation was dire. Without the Khazari, Earth would have been at a severe disadvantage, its fledgling fleets too small and untested to stand against the might of the Khazari and their allies. As the Khazari fleet made its way to Earth's borders, a wave of anxiety rippled through the galactic community. The Khazari were already aware of the new alliance, and their response was swift and brutal. They increased the pressure on neutral systems, attempting to force them into submission or silence. Diplomatic channels were cut off, and war preparations intensified. But the Khazari had underestimated the resolve of the human race. Maya stood before the council once more, this time not as a supplicant, but as a leader of a growing coalition. Humanity will not be cowed. We will fight for our freedom, and we will not let you dictate our future, she declared. Her voice rang out, carrying the weight of the new alliance and the determination of a species that had fought its way to the stars. The galaxy was shifting, and humanity was at the heart of it. The Khazari may have been the most powerful race, but they were no longer the only force in the galaxy. And as Maya looked to the stars, she knew that the war was only just beginning, one that would decide the future of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The galaxy now stood at the precipice of full-scale war. Humanity's decision to reject the Galactic Council and align itself with the Khazari had sent shockwaves through the core systems, shattering decades of fragile peace. With each passing day, tensions escalated, and the old order seemed to collapse further. While some factions openly supported Earth's defiance, many others feared the implications of humanity's boldness and were ready to take drastic measures to ensure they did not become a dominant force in galactic affairs. The Khazari, whose telepathic network had once ensured their supremacy in galactic politics, were the first to move decisively. They launched a series of brutal raids along Earth's outer colonies, seeking to undermine the fledgling human alliance and assert their dominance once more. The Khazari's fleets, led by their formidable warships, began positioning themselves on key trade routes, threatening to cut off vital supplies to humanity's newly allied systems. In response, Earth activated its defense grid, a series of deep space fortifications built to protect against hostile incursions. The stage was set for a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. On Earth, the mood was increasingly divided. The government had initiated a wartime footing, drafting millions into service, while civilians mobilized to support the war effort in every way possible. Cities were fortified, industrial plants converted to produce weapons and supplies, and every available resource was funneled into military readiness. Yet beneath the surface of patriotism, fear was growing. Humanity had never faced a galactic power like the Khazari, an ancient species with unmatched military might and ruthless tactics. Even with the Khazari at their side, humans were untested in the brutal realities of interstellar conflict. Ambassador Maya Roberts, now at the helm of Earth's diplomatic efforts, knew that war was inevitable, but she also knew that humanity's survival depended on their ability to outthink their enemies. In a secretive meeting with military leaders and strategists, she discussed a new plan, a series of covert strikes designed to destabilize Khazari-controlled systems and sow confusion within their ranks. The goal was not to defeat the Khazari in direct combat. Such an outcome seemed impossible, but to create enough disorder that the larger galactic community would begin to question the Khazari's dominance. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, smaller systems were beginning to shift their allegiances. The Xathra, once openly hostile to humanity, had begun to show signs of reluctance. Their warrior culture prized strength, but even they could see the shifting tides. Some factions within the Xathra leadership were starting to recognize the potential in aligning with humanity. Other species, particularly those with histories of oppression under the Galactic Council's reign, began to make overtures to Earth, signaling their support. The Khazari, with their battle-hardened warriors and unmatched mobility, proved to be excellent allies in the field, quickly striking key Khazari strongholds and demonstrating the power of their alliance with humanity. Despite these small victories, the war was far from won. The Khazari's response to these attacks was swift and devastating. Entire colonies along the galactic frontier were wiped out in retaliation, and Earth's defensive perimeter was constantly under siege. The media on Earth reported on these tragedies, showing the faces of devastated families and cities left in ruin. But through it all, humanity's resolve held strong. Their desperation was matched only by their determination to survive. But even as humanity and its allies fought valiantly, they knew they were playing a dangerous game. The Khazari were relentless, and the war could escalate at any moment. The balance of power was delicate, and any misstep could result in the extinction of entire species. In the darkest moments of the conflict, Maya Roberts found herself facing the harsh truth. This wasn't just a fight for humanity's survival. It was a fight for the very future of the galaxy. Would the galaxy's established powers return to their status quo, or would this be the moment where everything changed, where humanity, the new force in the galaxy, carved out its own destiny? The war had begun, and there was no turning back. As the war raged across the galaxy, humanity's resilience began to make an impression on even the most hardened galactic powers. While the Khazari had underestimated human ingenuity and tenacity, the Khazari were learning quickly that Earth's approach to combat was not merely about overwhelming force, but about tactical brilliance and adaptability. Humanity was showing the galaxy a new way of fighting, one that combined high-tech precision with the unpredictability of a species willing to risk everything. The tide of battle began to shift when Earth's forces, bolstered by the Khazari, launched a daring counteroffensive. For the first time, human fleets, coordinated by a combination of Earth's tactical genius and Khazari ferocity, scored a major victory against the Khazari. The battle took place at the gas giant Nithros, located on a vital trade route. Earth's forces, despite being outnumbered, had prepared a bold strategy, using the planet's volatile atmosphere and gravitational pull to trap the Khazari's massive warships. Humanity's superior knowledge of quick-hit tactics and Khazari agility turned what could have been a disaster into a resounding success. Khazari ships were lured into the planet's orbit, where they became sitting ducks for precision strikes from Earth's newly formed fleet of stealth ships. These smaller, highly maneuverable vessels had been developed in the chaos of war, and they wreaked havoc on the Khazari, crippling their fleets. This victory, however, did not come without a price. While the Khazari suffered major losses, they were not defeated, and they retaliated with brutal efficiency. The Khazari launched a counterattack that saw entire colonies decimated in their wake. Earth, shaken by the loss of innocent lives, began to recognize the true scale of the stakes. This was no longer about territorial disputes, it was a fight for survival. Despite the counteroffensive's success, the Khazari were not ready to relent. Their fleets continued to press forward, and their telepathic network proved invaluable in coordinating vast armies across the galaxy. Yet, for the first time, cracks were beginning to show. The Khazari, once considered invincible, had suffered a blow to their pride, and it wasn't something they could easily recover from. The victory at Nithros sent a message throughout the galaxy. Humanity could be defeated, but it would not go down without a fight. Ambassador Maya Roberts, meanwhile, continued to navigate the delicate political landscape. Earth had gained new allies in the wake of their victory, as several neutral factions, spurred by the Khazari's continued ruthlessness, began to throw their support behind humanity's cause. These included the Androsians, a peaceful race of biotechnologists, and the Velkari, a species known for their mastery of energy manipulation. Their support not only provided much-needed reinforcements but also valuable resources that helped bolster humanity's war efforts. However, the diplomatic victories came at a cost. The Galactic Council, unable to ignore the chaos anymore, was fracturing. Once a unified body, It now found itself divided between those who saw humanity's rise as a necessary change and those who viewed it as a threat to the old power structures. The Criveri, seeing the mounting shift in sentiment, doubled down on their efforts to force Earth into submission, using their vast influence to pressure neutral systems into isolation. They also began to spread propaganda, painting humanity as an upstart power that needed to be crushed before it could rise any further. But Maya was not one to be easily intimidated. With the alliance growing stronger and humanity's resolve hardening with each battle, she knew that the galaxy was now in the midst of a full-scale transformation. Humanity had ignited something bigger than just a rebellion. They had sparked a revolution, and no amount of Criveri force could stop it now. As Maya stood in the war room, watching the holographic map of the galaxy shift, she realized that this war, though costly, was humanity's chance to reshape the future of the stars. They were no longer just participants in the galaxy's politics. They were the ones who would decide what came next. The momentum was shifting in humanity's favor. After the unexpected victory at Nithros, the once unimaginable idea that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest powers was no longer just a dream. Earth's alliance with the Khazari, along with growing support from other marginalized species, had created a formidable force that was slowly but surely pushing back against the Criveri's overwhelming strength. But the Criveri were not easily deterred. Their reaction to the setbacks at Nithros had been swift and brutal, and they were willing to go to any length to regain their dominance. In response to the growing resistance, they launched their most devastating weapon, the Korath, a massive superweapon capable of annihilating entire planets with a single strike. It was a terrifying piece of technology, designed to be the ultimate deterrent, one that would remind the galaxy of their unassailable power. The news of the Korath's deployment sent shockwaves through the human leadership. The sheer destructive potential of the weapon made the Criveri's resolve clear. They would stop at nothing to maintain control. The war had now reached a critical juncture. Earth and its allies had to find a way to neutralize the Korath, or face the annihilation of their homeworld, and any hope of victory. In the heart of Earth's War Council, Maya Roberts sat before a map of the galaxy, her expression tense but resolute. The Korath's trajectory was rapidly approaching human-controlled space, and time was running out. She knew the odds were against them. The Criveri's superweapon was a technological marvel, far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. But there was one thing the Criveri did not account for: human ingenuity. Maya and her team of strategists devised a plan that was both bold and reckless. Using a combination of human stealth technology and Khazari guerrilla tactics, they would infiltrate the Criveri's fleet and destroy the Korath before it could be deployed. It was a suicide mission, one that would require an elite group of soldiers, engineers, and diplomats working in perfect unison. Failure meant the destruction of Earth. The mission was named Operation Phoenix. The human forces had to navigate through Criveri-held space undetected, a task made all the more difficult by the presence of Criveri telepathic commanders, who could sense the slightest disturbance in their fleet. To counter this, Earth scientists had developed a new form of countermeasure, a signal jammer capable of disrupting Criveri telepathic communications in a localized area. It was humanity's first significant technological edge in this war, and they had to use it wisely. The team chosen for Operation Phoenix was made up of some of Earth's finest soldiers, the best pilots, and a few Khazari warriors who volunteered to join the mission. Among them was Captain Sarah Novak, a decorated veteran who had led multiple successful campaigns against the Criveri. With her was Lyra, a Khazari war leader whose tactical brilliance and unmatched combat prowess had become legendary. Together, they would lead the team on what would be the most dangerous mission of their lives. As they prepared for departure, Maya stood in front of them in a final briefing. Her voice was steady, but behind it was a heavy weight of responsibility. This is our chance to change the course of this war. We are fighting not just for Earth, but for every species in this galaxy who wants to be free. If we fail, the Korath will bring an end to everything we've worked for. But if we succeed, we will have struck a decisive blow, not just against the Criveri, but against the tyranny they represent. You are the best of humanity and its allies. I believe in each and every one of you." With that, the team boarded their stealth ships, and Operation Phoenix was underway. The fate of humanity and the galaxy itself hung in the balance. The clock was ticking, and every second brought them closer to either victory or oblivion. The battle for the galaxy was about to reach its most critical turning point. The cold vastness of space seemed to swallow the elite strike team as their stealth ships glided through Criveri-controlled territory, cloaked by the best technology Earth and the Khazari could muster. Operation Phoenix had begun, and with it, humanity's most desperate bid for survival. Captain Sarah Novak and Lyra, the Khazari war leader, sat in the cockpit of the lead ship, their eyes fixed on the glowing stars ahead. The tension was palpable, but their focus was unwavering. Failure was not an option. The Korath, a massive spherical superweapon, loomed at the heart of a Criveri armada. It was the key to the Criveri's plan to break the resolve of the galaxy's uprising, and it would be the team's mission to destroy it before it could unleash its devastation. The Criveri's fleet was vast, and the weapon was well guarded, but the humans and Khazari had prepared meticulously. They had studied Criveri tactics, exploited weaknesses in their telepathic network, and designed a plan that depended on surprise and speed. But as they neared the Korath's position, the reality of what they faced began to sink in. "No turning back now," Novik muttered under her breath as the ship approached the outer perimeter of the Criveri fleet. Lyra gripped the controls tighter, her senses attuned to the faintest movements of their enemies. The plan was simple in theory, but risky. The team had to breach the Criveri fleet, disable the weapon's defenses, and plant explosive charges inside the Korath, all while evading the Criveri's telepathic detection and the sheer force of their warships. The fate of Earth, the Khazari, and every species supporting the rebellion depended on it. One misstep, one flaw in their carefully laid strategy, and it would be over. As they moved deeper into enemy territory, the strike team activated their signal jammers, causing the telepathic communication of the Criveri fleet to falter. But even this small advantage came at a price. The Criveri, sensing a disturbance, were quick to respond. Their warships began to move in tighter formations, seemingly sensing the infiltration. The clock was ticking, and the team had only minutes before the entire fleet would be upon them. "This is it," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with a quiet rage. "We take it down, or we die trying." Sarah nodded, her expression grim but resolute. "Let's make it count." The strike team made their move. Ships split into smaller groups, weaving between the Criveri warships, their stealth capabilities tested to the limit. The ship's cloaking systems held, but only just. Criveri patrols began to swarm closer. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse. One wrong move, and the team would be obliterated. Yet with unmatched coordination, the humans and Khazari pressed forward. Inside the Korath, the final countdown began. The weapon was preparing to fire. It was humanity's last chance to stop it. Novik's team infiltrated the heart of the superweapon, dodging Criveri soldiers and disabling key security systems along the way. They planted the explosives in critical locations, but as they made their way to the heart of the Korath, they encountered the last obstacle, a Criveri commander, a telepathic powerhouse who had sensed their presence. The confrontation was fierce. Novak and Lyra fought with everything they had, their movements fluid and deadly, but the Criveri commander was no slouch. He fought with the same brutal efficiency, using his telepathic powers to predict their movements, attacking with precision. For a moment, it seemed as though the commander would overpower them. But in that moment of desperation, Novik found a weakness, a slip, a hesitation. Using her superior tactical training, she exploited the opening, and together with Lyra, they brought down the commander in a final, explosive clash. The countdown on the Korath was nearing its final seconds. With seconds to spare, Novak activated the detonators. The Koreth exploded in a brilliant burst of light, sending shockwaves through the Kriveri fleet. The devastation was catastrophic, as the explosion shattered the heart of the superweapon and tore apart the surrounding ships. Back at Earth's command center, the news of the Koreth's destruction spread like wildfire. The tides had truly turned. The Kriveri, once so sure of their dominance, were now reeling. Their greatest weapon had been obliterated, and their fleet, left in disarray, was suddenly vulnerable. Maya Roberts stood before Earth's leadership, her face a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. Operation Phoenix had succeeded, but the war was far from over. The Kriveri were wounded, but not defeated. Yet, for the first time, humanity and its allies had dealt a blow that even the Kriveri could not ignore. The galaxy had witnessed a turning point. Earth had proven it could not only survive but strike back, an undeniable force in galactic politics. The fight for the future was far from over, but humanity had won a crucial battle in a war that would forever change the course of history.